You're listening to The Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Our next guest covers the Syracuse Orange, who are back in the Sweet 16 as a double-digit seed for the 20th time in Jim Boeheim's career as the head coach of the Orange. Hughes doing what they seem to always do, as I mentioned, back in the Sweet 16, as we will talk all things Syracuse here. Stephen Bailey joins us on our progressive guest line. He covers Hughes for 24/7 Sports, and he joins us now. Stephen, appreciate you getting up early. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
No problem. I guess it shouldn't feel like I'm getting up early, but when you stay up until like 2 or 3 every night to watch the games and write off it, suddenly 9:30 does feel a little early.
No doubt. So let me start with this. Just a simple question. You can take it wherever you want to go. Why is it that Syracuse thrives every single time they are a double-digit seed?
No, I mean, I think that the most common denominator is the zone, and just going up against teams that haven't prepared for it. A lot of the times they've gotten knocked out in recent years, or when you go down the line, it's teams that they've played against before. It's ACC teams that have game planned for it a couple of times. So, I think that especially on the round of 32 games, when you're going against a team that only has less than 2 days to prepare, and guys are recovering, and you're looking, how much time are you focusing on the zone? How much time are you focusing on what you did wrong and cleaning stuff up? You have personnel questions, right? So I think the zone on the round of 32 is really, really hard to go up against, and I think you saw West Virginia have some issues with it early. But I think this year's Syracuse team is a little different than the last couple that were able to get to the Sweet 16. I think the offense is better. I mean, they are really moving the ball well. They mostly take good shots. And, I mean, look, when any team in the country has a player as hot as Buddy Boeheim, it's just there's no easy way to defend him. Like, what are you going to do when you put him in ball screens? Do you have good enough defenders to switch? Do you have to trap? And then, Marek Dolezaj has done a really wonderful job as the slip man in those situations. What do you do? If you take him away, Syracuse has good enough passers and decision makers on the floor to get open threes and to get layups. So, I think it's a combination of the zone, and for this Syracuse team in particular, like they're a good offensive team right now. They've got to be playing, as efficiently as almost anyone in the country.
You look at Buddy Boeheim and what he's been able to do so far in these 2 games. I mean, what has been the biggest difference from a player you saw in the regular season to a guy right now that is as hot as any player that's left this tournament?
Well, so kind of like the line of delineation is the last couple of games of the regular season. Syracuse lost to Georgia Tech with two games left. They were on the outside of the bubble. They had North Carolina at home and Clemson at home. And Buddy was excellent in both of those games. And then you go to the ACC tournament. He was really good against NC State. And then he cracked 30 points against Virginia, which should tell you something, because Virginia, just with the pace they play at, even when they're maybe not at their best defensively, those games aren't usually very high scoring. So, I mean, Buddy has just been making everything. I mean, the first half against West Virginia is like the first time in the last 6 games that he's missed multiple open looks. I mean, he has been a machine. So, I think it's a multitude of things. I think it's a guy who is on a hot streak, and he's a shooter. He's someone who his dad and a lot of people around him have said works extremely hard. And I know that's kind of like the cliche thing to say, but I think he's prepared himself for this. He's obviously been around his dad, the NCAA tournament, his whole life. He knows the stage. He knows the stakes. And then I think maybe more from, I guess, from an ability standpoint, why wasn't he doing this early in the season? The easiest thing to point to is Syracuse. Buddy had 3 breaks due to COVID. Before the season, his dad tested positive, and an undisclosed player tested positive. Syracuse paused for 2 weeks. He got in 1 practice before the season opener against Bryant. And then I want to say a couple of weeks later, Buddy was out for 2 weeks due to contact tracing because a walk-on according to Jim Boeheim, a walk-on tested positive, and he was standing next to Buddy for too long on the sideline during a scrimmage. So he misses 2 weeks there, and then he caught COVID around New Year's during Syracuse's 18-day break between games. So, you've got a couple of months there where he's not able to practice for, it's got to be close to 6 weeks, maybe a little less than that. Like, he needed to get, and he was dealing with COVID. He's coming back, trying to get his legs back, trying to get his wind back. So I think just the physical limitations, and I don't know if you want to call it rust or wind or, all of that really contributed to him not shooting the ball so well for most of the year. And, now he is. So, how much of it is him being healthy? How much of it is him being hot? You can't say, but, to me, those are the two things that have factored into him playing so well down the stretch.
Stephen Bailey, 24/7 Syracuse sports reporter, joining us here as we talk about Syracuse advancing to the Sweet 16 once again under Jim Boeheim. With Buddy Boeheim, how much of being the coach's son does that motivate him? All the different people that I'm sure over the years have said he's only on Syracuse because of his dad. Do you think that is a big motivating factor for a guy that up until this tournament was, a nice player, but here he is now one of the biggest stars in the sport?
I think he's someone who's been motivated by being overlooked a little bit younger. He wasn't a big recruit. I think Jim's told the story a couple times, but when he was playing the Peaks Jam, his junior year, he went off against Penny Hardaway's team, and Roy Williams on the sideline basically told Jim, paraphrasing, "Hey, like you better offer your son." So, I think I think there's a little bit of that, but I also think he's driven by the notion that he's worked so hard, and he's basically put himself in this position by, putting in the extra hours and working on his shot and getting stronger. And Jim has said this, frankly, growing. If he was 3 inches shorter, he probably wouldn't be able to get off some of the shots he does now and play the same defense he does. So he's certainly benefited from that. But I think he's just driven by the idea that, on his 9th grade AAU team, he didn't start. He wasn't, it's not like he's been a front runner as a basketball player. Obviously, to be Jim Boeheim's son, you got a lot of things set up well for you in life. But, he's really earned his way into this spot. I don't think, once he had a solid freshman year, I don't think anyone was really saying, oh, he's the coach's son, he doesn't deserve to be here. He does, but because he's worked so hard to get here and he's had to kind of leap over so many players to get to this point, he says he always has a chip on his shoulder. So definitely someone who's driven by his past experience.
Stephen Bailey, 24/7 Sports, covers Syracuse with us here on our progressive guest line. How many more years do you think Jim Boeheim wants to continue to coach? He's 76 years old. Obviously, Buddy still has another year left if he wants to come back, and I think most people think he will. Do you think he will go out with his son, or is this something that you could see Jim doing? That is this could you see him coaching for another couple seasons?
I'll contextualize this by saying this is my first year covering the team in 7 years, but I've kept up with them, and I covered Jim then, and I'll believe that he's leaving when he leaves. I don't think there's any kind of official plan in place. He joked before the West Virginia game that Bob Huggins would be coaching longer than him, but I don't believe it until I see it. So, I'm not even, I don't even want to put a year out, man. I could see 4 or 5 years from now. Who's to say he won't still be coaching? And frankly, if he wants to, and they get to the Sweet 16 in 3 of the last 5 tournaments, it's tough. it's a tricky argument here because there really are a lot of, maybe there are some people in the fan base. There's at least a vocal faction of the fan base that does want to move on. But these runs happen, and it's like, how do you kind of make that jump? So, I don't, barring something crazy happening, I don't see anyone besides Jim dictating his timeline, and he hasn't said or done anything to make me think that he's really ready to hang him up.
Give me your early thoughts. Syracuse and Houston. Talk about a late night tip-off. 9:55 Eastern is the tip-off on TBS next Saturday. Give me your early thoughts on that matchup.
Yeah, it won't be coming on at 9:40 the next morning. Sorry, Jake. I caught the end of Houston Rutgers while I was writing, and that was such an exciting game, such a fun run by the Cougars. From Syracuse's side of things, my biggest questions are going to be on defense and just, can they stay connected? I think they've played pretty well. The second half against West Virginia, there were definitely some lapses. Can they stay attached? Do kind of the secondary guys, the bench guys that have provided the defensive boost, Robert Braswell and Kadar Richmond, can they continue to make contributions? So I'm like, fine. I think Buddy Boeheim is going to keep doing what he's doing, basically. So for me, it's can Syracuse get the stops it needs? Can it get out in transition? Can it rebound the ball? Defensive rebounding has been a big problem for the team at times this year. It's something they've gotten better with. It's one of the reasons why Robert Braswell is playing more than Alan Griffin. On that end of the court. Alan Griffin was, he played a couple of full games during the year. He's a 30-plus minute player, and now he's kind of the co-second wing with Robert Braswell. Quincy Guerra again, the bulk of the minutes when he's not in foul trouble. So, yeah, to me, it's going to be defense for Syracuse, and then the games when things have really unraveled this year, it started at that end, and it's kind of trickled over to the offense.
Stephen Bailey, 24/7 Sports Syracuse reporter. You can follow him on Twitter at Stephen_Bailey1. Does an excellent job covering the Syracuse basketball team. Stephen, appreciate your time. Enjoy the game on Saturday, and we'll get you on again soon.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
Stephen Bailey joining us there, breaking down Syracuse once again going on a magical run as a double-digit seed to the Sweet